Good afternoon. The idea behind today's class is to go through any problem questions that you might have. So I don't have any structured questions. The idea is just to go through any problem questions as well. So if you have any problem question, let me know.
I don't know.
Hi.
I don't have a particular question right now, but I just need to know what in the last few days, what should I concentrate on? Just before the exam.
My advice in general is just make sure that you polish up on the past question papers and past assignments. So go through as many past question papers and past assignments as possible. Because usually what you find is that as you go through the past question papers and past assignments, you are able to now pick up the trend of exactly how the lecturer asks questions, when it comes to certain topics, how the lecturer asks those questions from those topics as well. Because the structure doesn't change of certain concepts unless he tries to bring in a new concept altogether. So that's basically where you can see or expect a new way like a completely new question as well. Like for example, especially when it comes to theory questions, it's a bit open-ended. So sometimes here and there, they try to bring in a new question, which is basically a new theory question, which you are not able to pick out from past question papers or past assignments. So my advice is make sure that you polish up on as much material as possible going through past question papers and past assignments.
Okay, and which year are we concentrating? Where are we starting from? Which year?
It's very random. So my advice would be usually they try to be very random when it comes to some of these questions. Sometimes they can even ask you a question that they asked in 2024 if they see that maybe the way that the question was asked in 2024, many students hit a tangent. They can even bring it again in some cases, or maybe 2023. Then in some cases, they go back to question papers from 2017, 2018, just to try to ask the question in such a way that they've not recently asked as well. Usually that's what they do.
Okay, thank you.
So it's not like set in a way that that set. So for Fin4802, it's not set in a way that you would say this question is always going to come, this question is always going to come, or that question is always going to come. The lecturer tries to be random, although the trend usually is that they try to, some questions, if they see that there are problem questions that have been recently been asked, many students did not do well on those questions. Sometimes they bring it back again. Then in some cases, they go back to those older question papers, and then they can just copy and paste one question there from there as well.
Thanks.
All right. Is there a specific question or any problem question or problem concept?
Assignment 1.
2017 assignment 1. Okay. And demonstrate this notation.
You said you want to address that question.
All right, I'll just Just give me 1 second. I'm just looking for another question. Okay. 'Just give me 1 second. I'm looking for related questions and assignments that I can use to explain this. Okay. Mm, 2022. 2022. Right. Please take note. There seem to be lack of consistency in how the lecturer treats the in identifying the just give me 1 second. Interest rate parity. Mm, I'm looking for wait, the explanation is also given in the book as well, so that you can see the relationship. If you look at the 2017 assignment 1, right? If you look at 2017 assignment 1, they tell us that if you look at 2017 assignment 1, they tell us that if you look at the notation of the exchange rates, we are saying 1.2051 Swiss francs gives you $1, right? So how many units of the Swiss franc do you need to buy 1 unit of the $, right? So they're saying how many units of the Swiss franc do you need to buy 1 unit of the $? But if you check on the lecturer's memo for 2017, you will see that they are deeming the $, to be the domestic currency and the Swiss franc to be the foreign currency. But we're saying, how many units of the Swiss franc do you need for 1 unit of the $, right? Now, if you check on the 2022 assignment 1, we are given number of units of the $, for 1 unit of the British pound. So we're given number of units of the $, for 1 unit of the British pound. So they're giving us this notation. How many units of the $, do you need to buy 1 unit of the British pound? And if you look at this notation, you will see that in this case, the $, that is basically the one that is first mentioned, is the domestic, and the one that you're needing 1 unit of is the one that is what? That is the foreign. Do you see that there's lack of consistency in the treatment of identifying which one is the domestic currency and which one is the foreign currency as well? Do you see where there's a bit of disparity there when it comes to the lecturer's assessment of the identifying the domestic currency and the foreign currency? Do you get where my concern is regarding this? Because here we are saying, how many units of the Swiss franc do you need for 1 unit of the $, right? So usually, from my understanding, is the currency that you need 1 unit of is always going to be deemed to be the foreign currency. Then whatever the first currency to be mentioned in that case is always going to be deemed to be the what? The domestic currency. That's my understanding. And if you look at this one as well, the first currency to be mentioned is how many units do you need for 1 unit of the what? British pound, which would mean the domestic currency would be the dollar, the foreign currency would be the British pound, as shown when you look at the memo of this question as well. The domestic currency is being deemed to be the $, and the one that you need 1 unit of is the one that you're deeming to be the foreign currency. That's my understanding. Are we on the same page? So when you look at the way the memo was prepared for the 2017 assignment, I remember I did ask the students for the 2023 period as well, cross-check with the lecturer, but we didn't really get any feedback regarding that. So it's one of those things that we need clarity on from the lecturer. So this one, my advice is highlight this information, cross-check with the lecturer when it comes to the correct interpretation. Are we on the same page?
Yes.
All right. I think it was Elton who asked that question, because I know he sent me a message on WhatsApp as well, and I wanted to make sure that I highlight certain things that are inconsistent with the way that the questions are being presented as well. So please check with the lecturer regarding this, because the interpretation of what is deemed to be the home currency, what is deemed to be the foreign currency is very, very important. But one thing that I've noticed that the lecturer has consistently done, that's why you see that some of my memos, I do them consistently with how the lecturer has treated it previously as well, even though I have question marks on those methods. Usually, the lecturer is always deemed the domestic currency to be the US dollar somehow. Why? I'm not sure. Because if you look at the way this question was presented, you see that the lecturer is saying that they are. Is it this question? No, it's not this question. It's not this one. So if you look at the way this question was presented, you see that the currency that they're mentioning first, the one that you need, you're saying how many units do you need for 1 unit of the other currency? This currency that is being mentioned, as you can see this question, they're saying is the US dollar. For some reason, the lecturer always deemed the US dollar to be the domestic currency. Why? I'm not sure. But if you look at the way this was presented as well, you will see that they are first mentioning how many units of the Swiss franc do you need for 1 use of the US dollar, but they still deem the US dollar to be the domestic currency in that case. So please check with the lecturer. We've always had issues regarding this interpretation, but normally, I don't know, for some reason, if you are given the US dollar, the lecturer always tends to make the US dollar the default domestic currency somehow. Why? I'm not sure. So please, on this one, my advice is please check with the lecturer because it's a bit confusing on exactly why certain items are deemed to be. Because my understanding is the first currency to be mentioned is always going to be deemed to be the domestic currency because you're saying how many units do you need to buy 1 unit of the foreign currency. So that's the interpretation that I usually stand to say how many units do you need to buy 1 unit. So the currency that you need 1 unit of is the one that is always going to be deemed to be what? The foreign currency, because that's the one that you're going to buy. If you check in the textbook, if you check in the textbook on page 76, if you check in the textbook on page 76, they are saying with this is the new textbook, okay? There are two ways of actually quoting exchange rates. With the direct quotation, you're saying the number of units of the home currency for 1 unit of the foreign currency. which means how many units of the home currency do you need for 1 unit of the foreign currency? So this is when you are given the what? The direct quote. We're saying how many units of the direct of the home currency do you need for 1 unit of the foreign currency? This is when you're dealing with what? The direct quote. Then with the indirect quote, you're saying the number of units of the foreign currency for 1 unit of the home currency. And this is when you're dealing with the indirect quote. So there are 2 quotations that you are going to be given there as well.
So for 2017, are they using the indirect quote? That's the reason why.
So here they say a direct quote can be described as the value of foreign currency, and indirect quote can be described as how much currency we buy abroad. The indirect quote was once used in the UK and the parts of the former British Empire. It is a relic of the days when the British pound was non-decimal and it was easier to apply fractions to decimals currency than any complex UK currency. Now that the British pound is decimalized, direct quotes are used. So much analysis in international finance seeks to explain the value of the foreign currency and account for the variations in its value. So the direct quote is the natural rate to use. So if the value of the foreign currency goes up, the direct quote goes up. So taking the British pound as the home currency and an exchange rate of 0.56 British pounds is equal to $1. If the value of the dollar increases by 10%, then the new rate will be 0.56 multiplied by 1 plus the change. And in this case, the value of the is going to be equal to, you need 0.616 for $1. So similarly, if the value of the dollar falls, the direct rate will fall. If the rates used are indirect, the relationship would be opposite. So an increase in the rate would mean a fall in the value of the foreign currency. So not surprisingly, this is very confusing and should be avoided. So in equations, therefore, the most straightforward direct rate is used. So as a consequence of the direct and indirect method of quoting, to write the exchange rate increased is meaningless, as it depends on the method of quoting. So far better to write the value of the currency increase or decrease, since this is more clearer as well. And then they give an example in this case. If you look at these, so I think to make our lives easier going into the exam, I think since we don't have enough time, please cross-check with the lecturer. Please cross-check with the lecturer regarding this. But since we don't have enough time, the consistency of how these rates are treated so that we're able to do something consistently going to the exam, the US dollar is always going to be deemed to be the domestic currency. We're always going to be looking at the US dollar being the domestic currency for some reason. Because if you look at all other assignment questions, you will see that consistently the US dollar is always deemed to be the domestic currency. So if you check, you can pick any past assignment. Do you have another past assignment that you can use as an example?
2018 assignment 1. It's the same question,
20?
different currencies. 18.
20?
18.
Assignment 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's Canadian dollars or US dollar. Okay. Assignment 1, 2018. All right. So on 2018 assignment 1, they are saying how many units of the Canadian dollar do you need for 1 unit of the US dollar? And you can see would expect the US dollar to be treated as a domestic currency. And as you can see here, they are treating the US dollar as the domestic currency in that case. Then the Canadian dollar is being treated as the foreign currency. So for me, if we don't have enough time to cross-check with the lecturer, my advice is whenever you're given this question, treat the US dollar as the domestic currency for some reason. Because probably it's because the textbook was written from the perspective of the US, which means they always deem the US dollar to be the domestic currency in that case. Whichever notation they give you. Are we together there?
Yes.
Yeah. So going into the exam, my advice is to treat this thing, always treat the US dollar as the domestic currency and the other currency as the foreign currency. So if you look at any, I'm sure if you look at any past assignment as well, if you look at any random past assignment, you will see that consistently the US dollar is always being treated as the domestic currency and the other currency being treated as the foreign currency in that case. All right, is there another question?
So for the exams, the questions are basically repeated with changes in certain rates and figures and currency.
They're not always repeated questions, but every now and again the lecturer tries to bring in something, a new question, but every now and again, not all the time. So you find that randomly, every now and again, the lecturer tries to bring in new questions, but you see that some of the questions that you are going to encounter there are basically questions that have been asked before in either past question paper or past assignments. But then they also try to bring in randomly new questions, which is based on concept that they've not asked before as well.
So for the essay type questions that we get in the like theory questions, we just have to change the wordings and stuff to make it mean the same, but change the wordings and stuff, and it should be fine.
Yes, because usually those type of questions, if you are going to be copying and pasting the answers, you are going to be caught up on issues of plagiarism. So the lecturer is going to be able to pick it up. So my advice is you need to paraphrase somehow.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the side of nothing for now. So if I have anything as I go through
Right.
the past papers, I'll ask.
All right. Tomorrow during the day, I'll be available so that if there's any question that you come across, I will be available to address those questions. So tomorrow during the day, I will be available as well to address any questions that you might have. All right. Because uh, my advice is when it comes to identifying the home currency, domestic currency, and the foreign currency, try to just use the US as the domestic currency. Even if you look at the practice question that the lecturer has put in, if you look at the 2018 practice questions as well, you see that when you look at the 2018 practice questions, you are given the Canadian dollar to the US dollar, and they are deeming the US dollar to be the domestic currency. So whichever method that they use, whether it's the direct or indirect method, you always have to deem the US dollar to be the domestic currency. Where
Okay.
you looking at it from the US's perspective in that case. We always have to deem the US dollar to be the domestic currency in that case.
Okay.
Yeah. But my advice is you still need to check with the lecturer because it has to be made clear which notation is being used. Are they using the direct method or are they using the indirect method? Because the indirect method convention, it's one of those old phased out conventions which people do no longer use. In most cases, people use the direct method. Where you're saying, how many units of the home currency do you need for 1 unit what of foreign currency? That's the standard notation that is used. So the indirect method is there, but if it comes in the exam, as you can see, it means that there is need for the lecturer to actually clarify to say this is the indirect method, using the indirect method, or using the direct method as well. It needs to be clarified to avoid that confusion. So it's one of those things that you need to check and clarify with the lecturer. Very, very important. But going into the exam, if you don't get any clarity, by default, always deem the US dollar to be domestic currency. Is there another question? All right, please note that I'm always going to be available if there's any queries. I'm always going to be available if there's any queries. Tomorrow, I'm going to make sure that, I don't know if I'll just upload this video, but I don't think there's much that was asked, but I'll just upload this video for the benefit of those who are not available. Although, yeah, I'll upload this video tonight. Then I'll also make sure that tomorrow during the course of the day, if you send through any question, I should be able to address that question as well, so that you will be ready. And remember, you guys are writing on Thursday. It's Thursday, so which means you still have a few days to revise. Because I think tomorrow, if those guys doing Fin4801, then which means Tuesday, Wednesday, you still have another 2 days for you to polish up on your material as well. Are there any questions? All right, if there are no questions, let's end here today. I will upload this video of today's class tonight. Then if you have any questions, either it's tomorrow or any other day, whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday as well, or even Monday afternoon, I will be available to answer your queries as well. All right, enjoy your weekend and wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. All the best.